Welcome everybody. My name is Alexander Sokolov. I'm deputy director of our institute, which is called Institute for Statistical Studies and Economics of Knowledge. And this is the largest institute at the High School of Economics. Few words about High School of Economics, because maybe not everybody knows what it is. HSE is one of the largest and most advanced Russian universities. Last year we celebrated 30 years of our establishment, and now it's one of the most successful universities in Russia. We have more than 50,000 students and a lot of research units. And as I said already, our institute is the largest research unit. We have more than 200 staff, and we provide a wide range of studies related to science, technology, innovation, digital economy, creative industries. So we provide measuring all these areas, analysis, future studies, wide range of future studies. We also celebrated just a couple of weeks ago, we celebrated 20 years of our establishment. It was a big event for all of us. So modern cities are among key drivers of innovation, and at the same time they are very complicated objects to study. So why some cities are more attractive for innovation than others? What are success factors of the competition for talents? How policy of a city government can increase such competitive advantages of the city? What could university do in this respect? We have so many questions like this, and more of them are on the research agenda. During the last years, we can see this very clearly. So I hope we can discuss these issues later today, and we can, all of us can learn a little bit more probably about the innovation future of cities. So it's my pleasure to welcome outstanding experts from different parts of the world who will participate in our event. I wish all of us productive discussion, and give the floor maybe to Evgeny again, who will make an introductive presentation about the issue we would like to discuss later today. So Evgeny, the floor is yours, please, go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much, Alexander. So I'm waiting for the permission to show my slide from my colleagues. Yes. Yeah, I hope it works. So first of all, it's a pleasure for me and for my team to discuss the important issues of innovation development of cities here with our guests, and we want to share with you some preliminary findings, calculations, and ideas, which I hope will be a starting point for the following discussion today. So, first of all, it's a very tough problem to measure innovation at the city level. But if we want to govern, if we want to boost innovation, of course we need to measure. And city and innovation is a very popular topic, but when we mix them, we tackle a great challenge, because we don't see a consensus among researchers, and I think that there are many ideas here, and everybody will see it. Because what does it mean innovation at the city level? Is it a smart city agenda, and many people believe in that, or we need to look at the industrial portfolio city and look at knowledge-intensive business services or creative industries? Is it infrastructural issues, or is it a talent attraction agenda? So, and how to measure all these complex and difficult things? Then, what is really a problem is the shortage of reliable sources of data. To be honest, only patent and publication data available across the world, but it's not enough at all, because if we see the mayor's agenda, what they need to do, these two things, they measure maybe the 1% of all issues devoted to innovation. So where to find the information? And even so, the last point, even the notion of the city and city boundaries, it's also under discussion. So what does it mean, a city? So if we look at Moscow, Paris, in Beijing, so it's quite, for me, it's quite obvious. But if we go to Silicon Valley, of course, San Francisco is not be measured as Silicon Valley. So a lot of cities, so it's a huge agglomeration, but agglomeration could be defined differently. So a lot of problems, and we tried to deal with them since 2020, and for several years we are developing our own system of evaluation of city development across the world. So what so here our system in a nutshell. So two parts. We think that technological development, which is based on science, and creative industries, which are based on individual skills and talents, it's a two sides of the innovation coin. And we need to measure them all. So not mix, of course, separately, but we need both. And also open environment. And many researchers, they measure only open environment and believe that if you have good infrastructure, you have good talents. But we think that we need to separate them, but still to measure it. So technological development, it's of course innovation infrastructure like clusters, technology parks, and so on. But we also need to somehow catch the large corporations, which are very essential, and many cities and territories conquer for them. Of course, startups and unicorns. It's also new and essential point, universities and research and development organizations, but also patents and publications as well, but as some output. So it's not only them. Creative industries. So when we go to them, we didn't find any, how to say it, circle or model, because each of these industry developed by themselves and have different value chains, different business models. So the only way is to measure them separately. So we try to do it. So it's the first. The second, what is important, we try to look at alternative data sources. So no statistics available, unified statistics, but we don't want to get administrative data because it's not unified, it's not verified. Every city want to show, city mayors want to show them best, of course, number one. So how to believe it, I don't know. So no administrative data and no service, because service are not verifiable as well. Alternative, what does it mean, alternative? We look at the data source which are widely known among experts, which are verifiable, but never or almost never used to measure city, like research and development scoreboard, like Crunchbase, like World University ratings, like Nobel Prize winners list, and on and on. So we extract this data about companies, about persons, and distributed among all cities in the world. So no limitation. And the same for creative industries, but even more difficult. Imagine, for example, if we want to measure film industry, we extract data about IMDb database about the best movies. Then we try to find who produced it, and then we link the studio to the city. If we go to fashion, we extract the data about thousands of brands from Farfetch, Net-a-Porter, Louis V. Roma, and other internet retailers, and then we found the headquarters of these brands and connect them to the cities. So we're doing like that. So to extract data about technological and creative leaders. So we call it leaders. So it's not of course ordinary representatives of these spheres. And urban environment, more or less, this data is available but need to be collected systematically. So it's about methodology, and then how we deal with the problem of agglomerations, because we cannot compare, for example, Beijing and San Francisco. We need to compare Beijing and Silicon Valley. So we go to agglomerations and we follow the approach of OECD, functional urban areas. And plus to that, we also try to gather these agglomerations due to some national approaches if functional urban area approach is not available. So it's not available for all countries, of course, only for OECD. And we finish with almost 2,000 locations across the world. And for our purposes, we just take the 200 the best. So it's the final sample of 200 cities and agglomerations across the world. Here how it looks. So and for the last year, so the whole year, for us it was a collection of data, and dozens of students of High School of Economics helped us for that. And I hope in a month we will present the whole report, and all profiles of all these 200 cities will be available. But now we don't want to show these figures as a results, but we want to discuss some findings and maybe to verify them, and maybe to correct some of our ideas, because we need the wisdom of the world experts, and also to make the recommendations and ideas more policy relevant, because our ambition for that report is to be like a also policy tool for policymakers. So let me go to some findings, some ideas. First of all, it's not a surprise, but still this data a little bit shocking. So the global cities differ huge in terms of the innovation development. So imagine that 66% of our sample, cities of our sample located only in top 10 countries, and United States, China, and United Kingdom. You could see the figures, how many such global cities are located at these countries. So this world is very, how to say it, uneven, and no justice. And what is also interesting is that you know that mayors are very keen, so very focused on infrastructure development. So it's smart cities, it's Wi-Fi, digitalization, and so on. But all these 200 cities across the world, they differ a little in terms of this urban environment development. But what is really differentiate them is their attractiveness in terms of technology and creative leaders. So you see the figures, you see the gap between top and lagging 10 cities from our sample. Especially these figures are very very shocking in terms of creative industries, but I'll show you, and I return to that later. And of course, each city has its own profile in terms of which and how many technology and creative leaders it attracts. And of course, but there are cities which are leading in terms of that. So it's a magnets at the same time for technology and for creative leaders. But what is interesting, we found a group of these cities, they are leading, but mostly in terms of high technology. But maybe creative industries will be the next step for them. Of course, due to our methodology, we are very focused on talents because we believe that talents they are at the core, not the infrastructure. And we found an evidence of the high mobility of these talents. We know that, for example, Nobel Prize winners are very mobile, extremely mobile, but we found that not only them. For example, the founders of the unicorns, they almost have the same figure of their mobility as Nobel Prize winners. So 30% of these founders create their successful startup at the foreign country, but only 32 countries could attract such persons. So very uneven development. And we found also that a lot of countries and cities now they're trying to compete for their talents. And we gave a lot of case studies that we want to show at our report. And what we saw, first of all, is that the continuous broadening of the notion of talent. What is a talent? So 20 years ago, each country and city want to fight for the leading researchers, for best scientists, for sportsmen, for great cultural stars. But now we see that cities and countries, they struggle and they, I could say, fight for startups, for unicorns founders, for tech entrepreneurs, for venture capitalists, what is also interesting. So they try to attract these kind of investors, not only the people who buy something expensive in a city, but who invest in their startups, and even for the professionals. So broadening these notions of talents and also broadening the instruments. It's not only visa now, but also what is called soft landing. So a lot of measures at a city level to help these people to be integrated in the city, and not only them, but their family as well. And even in some cases, we see that such cities as Shenzhen, for example, they provide the direct grants for that people, and quite a substantive amount of money, by the way. What is interesting also is that not only huge cities, but small cities also have their chance, and we found a list of the very productive cities in terms of, in terms of these innovative stars per capita, and what to do with these cities, how to develop them differently, because they're not as global as the capitals, as the huge cities, but also should be supported and treated properly. Then we go to the technology side of the coin more precisely. We could found, and that's one of our, I think, very important conclusion, is that now we see global tech parity. So you know that before the Industrial Revolution, China and India were at the head, or maybe before the 15th century, of the technology development of the world. After that, it was the European world, or the West, saying more precise. But now we found global tech parity. Among 20 top cities, we could found 10 from the global West and 10 from the East Asia. So it's very interesting. And of course, China has a lot of cities among these 10 East Asian leaders. And what is interesting is still Asia is very good at attracting and fostering global high-tech corporations, so large corporations, large firms, but Western cities more focused now at venture capital. But here also we have very interesting, of course, exclusions like India, for example. So it's a very brilliant, interesting case of startup development and unicorn fostering. And we devoted a special case study for that at our report, because I think it will be very interesting for many developing countries as well. We also found that universities are at the core. So almost all of our cities from our sample has at least one university from the global rating. So universities are really, really important. And one of these evidence is that these universities also attract good entrepreneurs. Just imagine that 40% of all unicorn founders graduated from one of the just top 20 most prestigious universities in the world. So university, they not just educate, not just promote startups, but they fostering the great companies which change the world. We also found some difference between West and East, and I hope that we could discuss it further. We found that, for example, China is very good at the quality, so at the quantity of the patents and publications, and the figures are really shocking and amazing. But still, if we go at Nobel Prize winners, if we estimate highly cited researchers, we found still that US and West world leads the planet, I could say. So very briefly go to the second side of our innovation coin, creative industries. And here we found is extreme. I already said about some concentration unevenly, but here how huge this uneven situation here. Just 5 mega creative cities, as we call it, they concentrate 1/3 of all creative leaders of the world. So it's of our sample. So it's shocking figures, and so I think how to interpret them, how I think, yes, how we could to do with that is that, you know, science is an old thing. So it's a thing that I think from the middle of the 20s, and then maybe at the second part of the previous century, universities and cities, they try to develop and create these incubators, accelerators, and try to do something with startups. So I think that no one city, huge city or global city in the world which exists now, which has no accelerator or business incubator or technology center to accelerate startups. So it's now it's a general issue, it's a common knowledge. But creative industries, not just a culture, not just some cultural heritage, but effective and economically productive creative industries. So it's still hallmark of the best cities, and still I think could be a global next step for many cities, and a great challenge for the mayors. And just so I think that, and I believe that there are a lot of factors which foster creative industries, but just one of them, just to start our discussion, we found out that creative stars and leaders, they like to live in prosperous cities and rich cities. So no artist should starve, and welfare cities, they attract such kind of persons. So maybe for many cities now, it's very difficult to struggle for them because of this, how to say it, initial basic factor, which also should be met somehow. But I want to stop here, because it's very interesting also to start this discussion, but it's very important to hear what our distinguished professors think about it. Here, so I provide some discussion points, but so you could meet them or maybe provide and suggest some important aspects from your own perspectives. So, and here I want to give a floor to my colleague Ekaterina, who will moderate our discussion.
Evgeny, thank you very much. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. It's a pleasure to be here today on the first day of spring, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity to moderate this session as a part of HSE project on assessing the global attractiveness of cities. Our research revealed a galore of best practices of cities innovation excellence, and today we have distinguished experts from all over the world who I hope will share their viewpoints on how cities can attract the top talents. Evgeny has already demonstrated the issues we propose for discussion, and now they are in the chat box. While our experts are making their contributions, I encourage all the guests and participants of our expert discussion to post their questions in the chat box in Zoom, so we could select the most interesting of them and address them to the speakers. Dear experts, we kindly ask you to devote around 10 minutes of time to your speeches, as we would like to have some time for a brief Q&A after each contribution. And then at the end of the discussion, we will survey you and all the participants of this discussion on the future of cities. And hopefully when time comes, we will gather together again and check how accurate our foresight was. So I think this is the end of my introductory part. It's all about the agenda. And now I have the pleasure to introduce the first speaker. Professor Yuing Sun from Institute of Science and Technology Foresight and Statistics, Chinese Academy of Science and Technology for Development. China is the country which accounts for every 10th city in our final sample, where innovation economy leaders choose to go to live, work, create, and do business. And we hope, dear professor, to hear from you your vision on how Chinese cities succeeded in attracting talents. So the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And hello, everyone. I'm Su Yunjie from Chinese Academy of Science and Technology for Development. And I focus on the scientific and technological statistics and innovation evaluation. And our institute are responsible for the evaluation of innovation in many areas. And just as the professor introduced, I feel that the project or the report we discussed today is very meaningful. And I think the team has done a lot of work, especially making a list of 2,000 settlements in 135 countries based on over 21,000 innovation economy leaders. I noticed that there's edition of 2020, right? And it is based on 120 indicators calculated for 36 cities around the world. So the edition of 2023 has changed a lot. And I think it is not easy work to select the cities according to the innovation situation of various countries and regions. And a method to determine the innovation intensive areas from the situation of innovators is very valuable, I think. And I hope to learn more about the change and the method. And for China, we also have some practice in innovation evaluation. At the national level, there is National Innovation Index, which is published by CARSTATE, by our academy, evaluating the innovation capacity of 30 countries around the world. And at the regional level, China's regional scientific and technological innovation evaluation report evaluates the provinces of China, which is 31. And at the city level, we also have many reports. One of them is the Innovation City Evaluation Report, which evaluates 100 cities in China. And there's also an index called GRHI index, which evaluates 100 international scientific and technological innovation centers in the world. And for the evaluation system, I think the construction of the system is very important of the evaluation report because it is based on the understanding of scientific and technological innovation, and also it plays a fundamental role in the evaluation results. And so I'm very interested in the specific indicators or the basic indicators of the report, and I hope to see the new edition, maybe which is published in the end of March, right? And yeah, and I think I'm very pleased to see the there's many development or progress of the GCII in evaluation indicators, especially the introduction of more extensive and reasonable indicators reflecting the innovation or the creation. For example, in the creation industries, I think there's not only the film indicator, which is commonly used by just like by GRI, which is published by WIPO, right? They use the film indicator, but there are a lot of new indicators of music, fashion industry, arts, and literature. I think they are very normal and are indeed an important part of the urban innovation culture, which can attract the innovators. I think it's very important. So I think based on the indicators, I also think a lot about the innovation. It's very meaningful. And I'd like to compare some city innovation evaluation practice in China. And there may be some, I think maybe some special indicators which is used in China, but also to measure the cities around the world. I think maybe just from the other or from multiple dimensions. And for example, there's an indicator in China is called the number of large scientific installations and data centers, maybe the public cloud, to describe or reflect the digital world, right? And this kind of indicator can reflect the innovation infrastructure, I think maybe to a certain extent. And in terms of innovation environment, such as the number of registered lawyers, I think maybe it can reflect the law environment and can reflect the support for the enterprises, and also the number of international flights between the cities, which can reflect the connection between cities, but also can reflect the innovation of public service, right? And just another indicator called the public museums and libraries. And I think it can reflect the innovation culture, and which is also can be an element to attract talent. Yeah. And also furthermore, I think the views in the report are very impressive, just like the patterns of innovation attractiveness yeah, and the cities in China may be good at technological development, but not the creative industries. I think it's the shortage, and we should progress, and also the math and alien science. I think is very important. I think the word the word is good, and I think that maybe because China is developing, so maybe a lot of scholars can publish their papers in a short time. So there's many publications, but maybe the quality, right? The quality should be raised up. Yeah. That's all. I hope to hear more wonderful insights from the professors. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor, for your input. Yes, the report is to be published at the end of March, and it will reveal all the hidden secrets so far. In the chat box, I see a question to you about the report you mentioned, whether it is in English.
You mean the report?
Yes, you mentioned the report in your speech about measuring innovation level in China.
Oh yeah, and the national level National Innovation Index, it has the English edition, and yeah.
So is it possible somehow to find it on the internet in English? This.
Yeah, maybe I'll check. Yes.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
If you need, I can send you through the email or.
That would be great, because our participants got interested. Good. What you mentioned about the indicators you use seem very interesting. Especially, I noticed the number of libraries. We account for number of different institutions, including museums, theaters. Libraries seem also quite important. Don't you agree, Evgeny? To consider. Why not? Yeah. Both in terms
yes,
of
we have libraries in our previous system,
yeah,
frankly speaking. So and we have a struggle debate about it, frankly speaking. And now we deleted because maybe it was a wrong step, so we could discuss it, because libraries, they are for the local people mostly, we think, but to attract talents. So what it attracts? Some points of interest, even restaurants, some architecture buildings, and more, I think. So attract more libraries. So I think it's more indirect measure. But maybe we could discuss, because now libraries in our country, and I think the same in China, they restructure very much. So it's not just where you get a book. Now it's a digital hub. Now it's a place of a lot of events, and even or working place for startups and presenters, lecturers. So now they're restructuring, and maybe in the future we'll see a new form of libraries of the future, which will be a local hubs of creative people. And maybe in that case we will return to that idea and include this indicator. Yeah, thank you.
I have one more question to you, Professor. We base our assessment system on 3 pillars. So it is technological development, creative industries, and urban environment. In a nutshell, in your measurements, could you distinguish like the same pillars? So innovation, what is it? Technology and creativity and environment, or is it possible to draw the same picture?
Oh yeah, I think I think the pillars used in the GCII is very it's very good. And especially in the creative industries, it contains many industries which is I think maybe which is creative and can create good ideas, right? And can yes, it can be also maybe driver of the economics. I think that's good. And in China's evaluation system, I think the indicators, just like the fashion industry, the music, is like because because maybe we lack of the this kind the culture, but so in the evaluation system, it's not yet to be considered. And in our system, just like the science, the science and the technology development, maybe, and the output of the science and technology, and also some indicators to reflect the transform the knowledge to the market, right? Or the connection between the school, the university, and the enterprises, all the institutions and enterprises. And also there are indicators to reflect the technology market. In China, there's an indicator of the technology market because when we just like creator in the university, maybe a professor want to sell her technology, and he can register it in the technology market, and then maybe the deal is finished, and the number or the amount of the transfer should be recorded in the market, and we can get the number, or we can get the indicator to reflect the connection or the transform of the technology. Yeah, I think maybe some indicators just special in China, but maybe it cannot gain or cannot obtain in other countries because maybe the system is not the same.
Yeah, true. But we always benefit from the variety. Thank you very much for your contribution. And you see, our guests would like to have, if possible, the link to the report in the chat box in Zoom. So if it is possible to post the link to the report in the Zoom chat now, yeah, we would appreciate.
I'm sorry.
Should I say again?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah. The link to the report you mentioned.
Oh, yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
okay, sure.
If it is possible, then we would be grateful if you post it in the chat box. In Zoom.
I'll put it in the chat box.
Yes.
Or I'll check it to see if it is on the internet.
Okay. No hurry.
Yeah.
No hurry. Thank you very much. We move on, and one of the key findings of our survey was strengthening the competition for human talents between cities. And one of the most exciting experiences we revealed was the UK innovation policy. It aims at making the United Kingdom the most exciting place for innovators, for innovation talent, and thus it has been decided to transform the migration system to welcome innovators from the world over to come and change the world in the UK. Opening border to top talents is, of course, one of many success factors of UK cities in terms of their innovation attractiveness. And I hope our next distinguished expert will disclose some more. I'm delighted to introduce Professor Joe Ravitz, co-director in the Center for Urban Resilience and Energy, the University of Manchester. Professor, the floor is yours.
Hi there. Sorry, can you give me 1 minute? I just have to move location. 1 moment.
Sure, sure.
Okay, sorry about that. You see, we live in a very intensive innovation environment, and that means
Yeah.
a hot desk. We share workspace, and that also means sometimes we have to move rooms. Now, okay, so I'd like to show you a couple of things from our recent and current work. And I think this is relevant to the topic because the notion, in our experience at the Manchester Institute of Innovation Research, we are questioning, what is this innovation? What is it for? Who participates? Is it all about high tech, or is it about other things? And if we want to attract high tech, the inward investment, the global systems, we also have to talk about local issues and about the capacity of the city and the people and the region and so on and so on. These are all big questions. So first I will just show you, if I may, or if I can allow to share the screen, please.
You have the permission to demonstrate.
Yeah, so we now okay. Yeah, everything okay? So some introductory thoughts on what we now call co-evolutionary or transformative innovation. How do we measure this, if we can measure it, if it is useful to measure it? What are the indicators which might be relevant? This is not to say, oh, the Urban Innovation Index is, wrong. It's more to say there may be other points of view which may be useful in your next steps. And I would be very interested to help on that if that is useful. Thirdly, I'll just talk about the Innovation District programme here in 3 cities, and also an example from London. So quickly, I was working with the Joint Research Centre of the European Commission on innovation and regional transition and economic development strategy and so on and so on. So we produced a map. Well, there is a map, the Innovation Scoreboard map. And you can see here it's highly unequal between the east and the west and the north and the south and so on and so on. And then we have to say, okay, maybe we should just question for a moment what is going on here, because it's not to say that the southeast of the UK or southwest of Germany is so superior in every way to Romania or Greece or something. It's more to say there are different things going on and we are measuring them in different ways. So one way to visualize this is by a cartoon, and you might already know I like to draw cartoons to throw a light on difficult and interesting questions. And here is one, which is to say, oh, some parts of the UK look like this. The young people lack a positive future. The old people have lost a stable past. Inequality and repression is increasing. Consent is undermined by the division of labour, the abolition of trade unions, etc., etc. So these are 2 different pictures of the same coin. Now, we can then say, okay, go to our innovation district agenda, and I will not go through this in all the detail, but this is the beginning part of our current innovation district project, which is working in Manchester with links to Toronto and Melbourne. We have this triangle, and we're also looking at how this can be useful to other cities which may be part of the same agenda, and we're also looking for funding to do more, and so on and so on. So this is where we're up to. There's a few references: Schott and Steinmüller, Uyara, Morrison, and myself. So then we say, okay, let's talk about economic development and the progress of regions. And here we see an industrial city in big problems. Here we see a post-industrial city with a CBD, which pushes out the workers and the old housing. The port is now for tourist cruise ships on super yachts. The social and economic patterns are broken. The communities are vulnerable. So we have to then say, oh, okay, is there an alternative? Is it possible to imagine a city where everyone has a livelihood? And so we can start from that point of view. Sorry for the background noise here. Should be temporary. And say, oh, okay, let's envisage a whole system, a whole city and its region, in which innovation then is a central part. So innovation is not some god to be placed on a mountain, worshipped. I want to say, yeah, what are we trying to achieve here? So with that in mind, we can get more analytic. These are some of many systems diagrams from the industrial city to the evolutionary city and to the co-evolutionary. And one important ingredient here, yes, is a financial system which does not only extract, it circulates and reinvests regenerative finance. And that is one of many possible components. Sorry, this is not my lucky day today. If the noise is a big problem, let me know. I'll move location again.
It's okay. I hear you quite well. No problem.
Yeah, we hear only you.
We can apply the same kind of thinking to the innovation curve. This is framed here as a transition curve. We study here, as you might know, socio-technical transitions in like energy systems, transition systems, transport systems, and so on and so on. And in each case, there is a curve, from 0 to 100% of market share or stock or flow. And we can look for the functional components of achieving that transition. If we are being more realistic, we also look for the negative feedback loops, the blockages, things which are stopping that transition take place. There are many. And it's my belief, if we're serious about innovation, we have to look more closely at why does innovation not work in that location or that sector, and so on. I will, bear with me, I will move location. I think the noise is like a problem. Another feature of innovation is that
Hi, Joy, we didn't hear you. The sound has disappeared.
Okay. So I think we are facing some technical issues.
thinking,
Hello, Professor?
between all the stakeholders.
Okay.
Let me just try to connect again. Yeah, we're on business online. Okay.
Yes,
So then
that's great.
okay. Now, so then we say, oh, okay, some of these things will support the innovation curve, the transition from 0 to 100%. Others will block it or do something else or sabotage or many other possibilities. Okay, so this is then the way in to thinking about the innovation process, not only a linear thing, but also a relational thing. And then, okay, let's draw that. So here's a linear innovation model. STI inputs, ecosystem, the location factor in this or that city, innovation activity, innovation outputs, innovation outcomes. Very nice. Okay. But then we look at the typical reality. We say, okay, things are much more connected. They're not always a linear system. And this comes from experience. There is a growing literature. It's still very difficult to put your finger on and say, oh, yes, this causes that, because it doesn't quite work. It's a systemic thing. So then, okay, one example, we can look at a very topical innovation in terms of urban transportation and say, yeah, the old system, please, you had to stand on the side of the road and wait for a taxi to turn up. Very inefficient, profitable for some, but not so many. Then we look at Uber or Lyft or the equivalent in many cities. And this is a great innovation. I use it myself, but it has big impact. Profit is extracted, data is extracted, community is disrupted, the workers are not treated well, and so on. So then we say, okay, is it possible to design a more synergistic transport system? What kind of innovation process is necessary to achieve that? Where the profit is recirculated, the transport system is integrated, and so on and so on. So all of these things really kind of add up. Now, then, how do we measure these? Is it even useful to measure them? So we can say, okay, we have different types of learning going on in the innovation system. We have different types of governance structure, which are suitable for those learning systems. We have different types of city structure, which are suitable for those governance structures, from the very functional to the capitalist, competitive and extractive, the profit is extracted, all the way to the multifunctional, multi-use, human scale, and so on. So we can look at economic systems, social systems, and so on and so on. And this is the background. Okay, so then, skip this, we get to say, oh, okay, we can start to make a matrix, yeah, this kind of economy, this kind of innovation system, this kind of economic growth. And then we get to say, okay, how do we find indicators which reflect each of those different types of system? So this is a first attempt. It's published in my recent book, but there is much more to do. We looked at 6 cities where I have personally worked and lived in over the years, and we look for the indicators for these 3 different types of systems in these 6 cities. And then this is the list of indicators with sources from the Human Development Index to the World City Report, to the Global Urban Observatory, on the material and functional dimension. And then we have a different kind of set of sources for the evolutionary dimension. We're talking about smart, complexity, competitiveness, and so on. And then on the co-evolutionary dimension, we're talking about other kinds of stuff. We're talking about the collective intelligence, the welfare system, sustainability policy, the effectiveness of governance, and the freedom of individuals, the well-being, and so on and so on. And again, there's a different set of sources. Not so easy to find. The indicators are not so directly statistical. The sources are not so robust. For example, if you look for the well-being index, yeah, it depends who you ask, what questions. There is nothing included, and so on. So, but this is a start. And then these are some of the preliminary results of some of the cities covered so far. And we can see roughly, oh, okay, Manchester is a mixed position, but it has strong qualities. Melbourne seems very strong in most ways, but not all. Medellin in Colombia, a well-known innovation city in Latin America, has great strengths, but also great weaknesses. Chennai has great weaknesses and not many obvious strengths in this dimension. So this was then a reminder, because we were also working at Chennai. Let's go back to Chennai and look at what really matters to people there and what kind of innovation people are talking about and are interested in, and how to measure that if it's possible to do that. So that's where we are up to right now. Again, a word quickly now about our innovation district project. Well, start by listing all the stakeholders. This is a short list. The long list is much longer. We can group them into different domains: political, social, economic. And then we start to say, oh, okay, let's talk about the relations in the whole system, not just the parts. So here's an example from our low carbon innovation project. We say, well, the universities, they're not connected, the policy is full of gaps and barriers. Consumers, they are short term, they are not interested to invest. Small businesses are completely chaos, etc., etc. The innovation here then produces clever gadgets, little pieces of machinery to do some part of this better, but it does not transform the whole system. So then we have to say, again, this is the cartoon version. Let's talk about the synergies between the different stakeholders: the universities, the finance, the entrepreneurs, the consumers, the distributors, the procurement people, and so on and so on. And this is the cartoon version. Then we say, oh, okay, how do we achieve this? In Paris, well, here's one version of the good city of Paris. And here's one picture of a current project now taking shape in London. And a friend of mine is trying to create a food innovation cluster and district in central London. I won't talk about the details because it's too early, but we can then say, oh, okay, this concept now in discussion with the local government and the landowners, say, okay, there is a number of overlapping concepts. They're all relevant, they're all topical, they are all innovative in some way or other. And here we are, they look like this and that. And then the most important thing is to say, how do we generate the value? Because without the value, the developers will not come to build the buildings. The investors will not come to, bring their money here and not there. So we have to talk very seriously and systematically about the value between these different parts of an overall system. Now, again, this is early days. We are just at the frontiers of what we know about how the innovation district on this local level can work. And when we say local level, yes, it's one neighborhood in a large city called London. And London is, I think, top of the list, the league tables. That is also part of the context. But we can also say at the same time, London is full of poverty, deprivation, exclusion, and disinvestment. So we have to be very careful what kind of London we're talking about. Anyway, so I will stop there, but that's the book which has all the answers, or at least the beginning. And thank you very much. Sorry for the inconvenience.
Thank you very much, Professor, for your very interesting presentation. I have one question, and I kindly ask you to be brief. So in 3 categories of cities you mentioned, linear... Hello, can you hear me? Professor? Oh dear, I guess we are facing another technical issues. Professor, if you hear me, could you restart your connection? Yes. Are you back?
I'm back now. Yes. So are you
Yeah.
back?
Yeah. So my question was, in your three categories of cities, linear, evolutionary, and co-evolutionary, how does the attitude towards talents from all over the world change?
Good question. Thank you. I would say in the first case, the linear model, the talent is very clever. It can build fantastic machines or invent new parts of science, etc. In the second model, the evolutionary, this is like neoliberal capitalism, if you like, talent will come if things are right. But as soon as things change, the talent will leave. They will go to San Francisco or Beijing, or they have no other connection to this place, but it's a nice place. The coffee is good. The apartments are high quality and not too expensive, but more so, there is a reason for being there. I start to think of it like it's like you go to a party, at somebody's house. Well, this party's nice. Yeah, there's plenty of drink. People are friendly, but if something happens, something changes. Oh, I'm going. Now, in the third model, the co-evolutionary, we could say, yeah, the talent is global, but it's also local. They have local roots, local connections. And this does not say just, oh, my friend from Beijing, he comes and he went to a party, therefore he has a local connection. It's more to say, these things take time to build up through friends, through relations, through cultural exchange, through research collaboration, etc., etc. And well, this is part of the ecosystem effect. So also, I could say, innovation studies have had these ideas for a long time. For a long time, we have been talking about ecosystems, right? So then we say, okay, what kind of ecosystem? Who is managing this ecosystem? Does it manage itself? And if we are trying to produce indicators to measure it, what can we do with that information, etc.? So these are big questions, but I hope that answers your question for a start.
Yeah, indeed. And globalization is one of my favorite words, which is global and local at the same time. Thank you so much.
Could I also ask a question?
Of course.
Yes. Maybe it looks quite provocative, but nevertheless, I look at your system and find that you measure these types by quite general characteristics of effects, I could say, like the welfare, the democratic possibility of making voices, and so on and so on. So, and the question, I know, because I think maybe you have a lack of indicators, but maybe not. Do you like these indicators, or you also see that it's problematic because you cannot directly measure this innovation, or maybe on other sides you don't need it because innovation need for the effects, not for the innovation. And when you measure effects, you're okay with that. But here also a question: this welfare and democracy, is it the only way? That is why it's quite provocative.
That's a very good question. Well, without beginning a bigger discussion about, global politics, it's clear that we cannot assume that, the welfare states and democratic systems are, the one way forward. That's very clear. Some of this thinking came from a previous project about 15 years ago. I was running around Europe, looking at different regions and their capacity for regional innovation and development. And Europe, as you might know, has a very big and advanced system of innovation scoreboards, innovation policy, innovation funding, and so on and so on. It's a long story. But basically, what we could see was, from our fieldwork in the regions, was that the indicators which were used in the scoreboard, I showed this in the map of Europe at the beginning. These indicators, if you look closely, there are a lot of big problems. And some of the problems are in measuring things which are not important or missing things which are more important. Some of them come from the way that the indicators are then used to get the funding. So people say, oh, if we can just get our 100 PhDs per 1,000 population, yeah, we will then score this much on the funding system. And the money comes in, and then the consultants will use the money and take some for themselves, and so on and so on. In other words, so the indicators then become built into a system which is, pretty good, probably the best in the world so far, but very problematic in many ways. And the effects can then be seen in the regions of Europe. And some regions, Southeast England, very nice. East Germany, very good. Other regions, Northwest Spain, not good. Greece, not good, and so on and so on. In other words, so it seemed that the whole basis of innovation policy, in which the indicators are at the center, had a lot of learning to do. It was not our job to say it's all wrong and do it, start again, but more to say, yeah, there is some learning here. Let's see if we can do this learning. Now, then coming back to the indicators for the different qualities of a co-evolutionary system. Well, so for example, if we take the governance system, which is maybe the number one, we can say, okay, in this kind of country or this city, the governance is top down, people do what they are told. If they refuse, then they are put in jail. And so another kind of country, it's different. Now, in the first country, we can say, well, yeah, decisions are made very quickly, and it's very efficient, and they can make a long-term plan, but much of the human potential, the human resource, the skills, the creative thinking, this will not be possible in that kind of country. So then we have to start a journey into the political and government system to say, yeah, what kind of government system or political system is most suitable for what now we can call the collective intelligence. I didn't talk too much about this, but this is another presentation. But the collective intelligence is really the capacity of all, from rich to poor, from inside to outside, all the sectors to learn, to communicate, to coordinate, to collaborate, and so on, and to co-innovate. And well, just, one example is, if you're in a corporation, everybody knows, if the chief executive walks around and talks to the people, the workers down there in the factory, then this is more likely to be a well-functioning, viable organization, firm or corporate. If the chief executive, you cannot talk to him or her, it's impossible, then sooner or later the corporation will not be able to learn and adapt. So it's a long story, but I hope that is the beginning of a picture.
Okay, so thank you very much. One small remark to Evgeny's question. Evgeny, I think it is impossible to be completely satisfied with the indicators. Look how our system evolved, and let's see what happens when we have HSE GCII 2025. So it's also sort of innovation and experimentation. And I think it's natural. Okay, so our research identified authentic cities of innovation attractiveness, which have gained leadership in various niches. And one of the exciting examples for us is Cairo, the world top by the number of students. As academicians, we know how important alma mater is. And let me now ask our distinguished expert, Professor Mohammed Ramadan A. Rezk, the Director of Egyptian Science, Technology and Innovation Observatory, Academy of Scientific Research and Technology, to share your ideas on what stands behind the innovation appeal to cities. Professor, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you for a great opportunity. I would like to emphasize for some point and share with you the experience of Egypt. Also, innovation doesn't happen only in business sector or industry combined, but also happen in cities, governorate, region, and country at large. And also, it is possible to find many indicators to measure and monitor the progress of innovation performance in cities. We have experience in Egypt as we developed the composite index to measure the innovation in cities, and we have been trying to identify the linkage between innovation, research and development, science, technology, strategy, and economic development, and also we trying to assess the innovation efficiency and the effectiveness and the impact of innovation. Especially, we focus on the social innovation. We depend on, I can share with you the article for the Egyptian Innovation Governorate Index. It's depend on some indicator for innovation input and innovation output related to the number of patent and related to innovation human capital, like for academic skills in different university in cities, and also for patent granted and patent application, and the number of small medium enterprise innovative in cities, and there's some indicator related to created new technology center and a new technology incubator, and also we focus on the enabling environment in cities, like cooperation with cities, with the research institution and university, and also for international collaboration. And also we measure the innovation output, like for the number of service or service provided by the government to the people, and how many people used this service. And also we focus on the innovation service provided to the investor and the organization innovation and market innovation, many type of innovation. And also for regarding the, if we're going to compare between the high technology and the creative industry, as you mentioned in the report today, and we and asked ourselves what is the important. Yes, actually the I suggest, or I think that the creative industry in cities is very important, because if we invest in high technology without presence of creative product, this is the main challenge. But with the existence of creative products that can complete in all market, also there is also already competition between different cities for talent. As we see, this is some announcement from some city to provide the talent, and also we can find the competition between, like for example, many big city like in Dubai, or and sometimes in Europe, you can find provide some incentive for the talented people to make like a migration. And also I want to emphasize on the policy tools to support innovation in cities as an enabler. Government adopt innovation policy design to support innovation activity, but it is an integrated system for innovation between all actors. So cities must have a set of laws that encourage innovation from the first stage, from the children at an early age, to graduate and support community innovation in large way. also, and I think finally, the affordable living standard, it is in an opportunity, but in other hand, it is depriving poor cities from benefits from the talented people. And this is what we are already seeing in the migration of innovation mind and going to a rich city. So I think this is a good point if we think for the innovation in the cities, but also we need to going to encourage the city to increase, or we think to for the poor city, because sometimes we talking about the most innovative city and what is the innovative city, but we neglecting sometimes how to encourage the poor city to for innovation, or to increase the innovation inside it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor. So I would like to address the question you have just mentioned to you again: how to encourage cities to
Yes.
boost innovation? Let's think together.
Yes, yes, it is a big challenge at this brainstorming, but I think the main challenge is related to resources, because sometimes when we talking about the poor city regarding to the economic situation, because in sometimes we find that the challenge in policy, challenge related to economy, but I think we need to redesign the policy to encourage the private sector to investment the innovation, and I think this is the main challenge. But I think it is big questions to answer in this. Thank you.
Yeah, yes, indeed. I would like just to share from what we have learned in our survey. The case of Indian cities. So irrespective about well, you mentioned poor cities, poor, rich, it doesn't matter now, I think, but it's about encouragement. What inspired us is the way they changed attitude towards venture entrepreneurship. In a nutshell, it has become like a virus, but in a very positive sense. Everyone was inspired to start their own ventures, no matter where they live, in mega cities or in rural areas, no matter what their initial capital was, lowering the requirements to the startup, promoting it from festivals, introducing the National Startup Day. This was just like the huge startup euphoria, and it worked. So in terms of encouragement, I think this emotional aspect is, of course, not the top, but it matters as well. This is what we learn from the global experience.
Yes, I'm agree with you. This is the starting point for entrepreneurship and also for startup. But actually, for example, I saw some pioneer and some innovative enterprise in Egypt last year, but actually they moving outside the Egypt according to the policy or regulation, and also we need to some part to complete and to preserve the continuity of this firm.
Yeah, retention, attraction and retention. Yeah, I totally agree with you. Thank you very much. Evgeny, any questions from you? No?
No, thank you very much. I'm thinking about this inputs. Yes, maybe I'll give some feedback later.
In closing remarks. Good. Dear colleagues, today we have enjoyed a variety of experiences from the West and the East regarding how cities gain their leadership and attract top talents. And to reflect on all the lessons learned, I'm particularly excited to give the floor now to my colleague, Professor Özcan Saritas, the head of Laboratory for Science and Technology Studies at HSE Institute for Statistical Studies and Economics of Knowledge. has the finest blend of STI expertise from Turkey, the United Kingdom, and Russia. So, Professor Saritas Aschan, would you kindly summarize today's discussion?
Thank you. Thank you, Evgeny. Thank you, Katya, for organizing such an event. I really enjoyed the talks, and there are a lot of thought-provoking ideas actually emerged as you were speaking, and then through this kind of interactive exchange. So, well, I realized that it is a very complicated issue, actually. So there is no one straightforward way of measuring innovation in cities. And I understand the challenge you have, for example, Evgeny, when you do such a project, to find some new indicators and then ways of measuring them. And this is a truly challenging issue because we are not talking about the hard or bounded system. We are talking about the soft system. And this soft system actually has a lot of inputs, a lot of interactions, as Joe mentioned, for example, in his presentation. So there's a synergistic environment with many actors, many stakeholders, many different interests and worldviews are involved in this process. And as a result of this synergistic process, some outputs are, of course, generated. So starting from the beginning, when I looked at Dr. Yoonji San's presentation, so that was really interesting in terms of the idea of bringing some new indicators into the innovation process. So as you also mentioned after her presentation with your question, like the number of libraries, museums, theaters, and so on, because innovation is actually not only a technical issue, it is also an issue of, human life, and then the city life, and then all sorts of combinations of this. So there are a lot of issues which will actually, attract people to come and get together in the cities and then start producing and co-producing things. So looking at the numbers and measuring those kind of input numbers, like Evgeny also mentioned, like the startups, for example, and then the amount of venture capital coming and so on, all this kind of input issues, they are relatively easier to measure. But on the other hand, we also need some kind of course, an output orientation. So how we can actually measure the output is also probably a question that we need to ask ourselves. Because in the end, we may have a number of libraries, for example, many libraries in the city, but then how many times, for example, are these libraries visited, and how many people and what people do with that? And now everything is, of course, also electronic. It is basically also a question of like accessing some online libraries, online databases, and our other available data. And of course, accessing the number of people accessing to them is good, but also to understand what people do again and they produce with that. So this is one important point. So we should bring the input values or supply side with the demand side and in output values. So what is being created and what value is added as a result of this process, because innovation is obviously a process. So this was the main question again, Joe argued. So how do we generate value, and then how to create real effects, and which is the process of collective intelligence, as he mentioned, and then Joe also indicated some soft indicators for measuring innovation, like functional, smarter, and wiser, which are, I think, nicely complementary to the framework that you have presented, and then also Dr. Yoonji presented. So this we should find a way to combine this. It's tough. It's a hard job. So that means we still need to do some research and then give some thinking about this process. Because city is a subsystem at the same time. So there are like a broader issues which may be arising in the context, which is the national context. Of course, there are a lot of social, economic considerations there, and then the balance of power again, and then the ecosystem, for example, which is friendly for bringing like external people. And while bringing external people, for example, attracting talents from the world, and what possibilities do we give them? I actually wanted to ask Joe, for example, whether people coming from all over the world are relatively luckier in the UK compared to the local people, because he mentioned that some local people are very hopeless, and then they are worried about their future and so on. But on the other hand, a lot of talents are coming from all over the world with all their skills and capabilities, and because companies or research institutions are trying hard to attract them, and which may put local people in disadvantageous position. But there are also others, like when you bring people, talents from abroad, so in some other cases, maybe you are giving them less opportunities than local people. So that balance is also a very important one. And then finally, to cut it short, because I can really talk about this longer, it's a very interesting topic, and it's a complex issue, and there are a lot of, it's another linear process, as Joe mentioned, so it is difficult to use linear indicators to measure this unlinear or non-linear system. So, and finally, I would like to add a few words based on what Dr. Ramadan said from Cairo, and he was talking about the businesses, for example, entering into the city and into the country, and of course, how to maintain their existence. So it is very important to understand what are the motivations, like how they make decisions, for example, when they enter a country. So maybe it would be a good idea to speak to some businesses about that also. So what is motivating them, for example, to enter? Is it because of the markets, for example, or the market potentials they see for certain products or some certain services, because there might be some critical mass of users or consumers or whatever. There might be also actually possibilities for innovation, for example. Of course, if it is the second, it is much better. And if they are entering for innovations and innovation potential, so then what may keep them there? And then it may actually refer back to the point Dr. Yoon-ji mentioned about law and legal issues, for example. And this is an important issue when a company, for example, tries to, or decides whether to enter a market or whether to remain there, whether their rights will be like protected. And so whether, they can defend, and then so their, assets won't be seized and so on. So there are multiple factors actually, which can be explained with the STEEP CU framework Joe presented. So it was actually STEEP V, but then he made it STEEP CU, so social, technological, economic, environmental, cultural, and urban. So I like this framework very much also. So yeah, to conclude, we are dealing with a complex issue. We can measure, of course, some input indicators. We can look at the number of, institutions, amount of investments, number of people entering, and etc. But it is also important to measure the value they are adding into the system, globally originating from that city. So we can probably think about that a little bit more. And well, I hope we will continue discussing this issue further, because I really enjoyed the session. Thanks for organizing this, and thanks to all the speakers for joining us.
Yeah, Özcan, thank you, very wise speech. I just want maybe to comment and how to say it, to develop more one thing, what I think essential, because many countries and cities as well talk too much about how to retain the talent, foster and retain. But I think that in the modern world, you cannot retain anybody if you don't attract the talent from the world. So attraction is not alternative strategy to retention. It's the same. So if you're attractive place, you retain, or retrieve people from the world. So I think that's one of the essential key things. Of course, it's very difficult to measure, yes, but it's not about measurement. I think it's about the policy. Yes, it's my comment.
It is not impossible to measure, but of course we can discuss like some other indicators to represent I mean those softer aspects. I find the OECD Better Life Index very useful in that sense. It is looking at all those factors like in terms of housing, income, community, education, for example, not only like education for talented people, but also for their families, for example. And then how they find the environment, a clean environment, access to health services, access to good educational infrastructures. So one person actually comes, it's usually not a person himself or herself, but sometimes they go with their family, right? And then so it's important to give them also necessary infrastructure. This is not always a good salary or competitive salary, but also a good system of life, composed of, transport system, education, health, and other services and infrastructures.
So it seems it's a bit early to finish the discussion. We're restarting. It's good. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. This is how we titled the case of Indian cities featured by the boost of startups and unicorns, the backbones of New India. We have learned so many exciting practices. And now we have Professor Gautam Goswami, Scientist G, and Head of Foresight and Vision MTV 2047, Department of Science and Technology, Technology Information Forecasting and Assessment Council. Professor, would you now? Okay. So, Professor Goswami, are you with us? Yeah, in the process. Let me check again.
আমি তো দেখতাম তাহলে আমি বুঝে যেতাম কি বলতে চাইছে।
Okay, Professor, can you hear me? Professor Goswami?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly. Welcome to the seminar. So I have already introduced you and now would like you to share the insights regarding the attractiveness of Indian cities to venture entrepreneurs and other innovation economy leaders. Please, the floor is yours, but I kindly ask you to speak up to 5 minutes if possible. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. I really convey my sincere thanks to Higher School of Economics for giving me the opportunity to share my thoughts on the innovation. I really congratulate HSE for bringing out a nice document on the innovation, which is actually a gray area. Innovation, the way we look at it, it is not as easy as we see from innovation perspective. It has a lot of dimensions actually, and I'm happy that you have made an attempt using 74 indicators and trying to map the innovation of 200 cities agglomerates. But I have some thought process which I want to share with you. I don't know, maybe in the whole document you might have mentioned about this. What type of innovation we are talking about? Are we targeting what type of innovation we are targeting for? Is it the innovation related to product development? Is it the process development related innovation? What is the key recommendation for the study in order to strengthen the innovation ecosystem? If you analyze the report, it gives a lot of insights about the innovation ecosystem, but whom we are targeting to this document? Are we targeting to policymakers? Are we targeting to researchers? That need a little clarity in this document. And because in Indian perspective, innovation is absolutely centered around big institutions. But in 10 years down the line, this trend has to be reversed because innovation has to come from grassroots level. Because, you know, the innovations are restricted to high-end research facility oriented activity. But in Indian context, if you see the local problems are huge, which are not getting the attention of researchers. They are more into upcoming problems, international problem, national problems. And that's why, to my mind, innovation should be rooted from grassroots level. And India is working on it. Probably this barrier, which has been flagged in this report, that cities plus expert-based innovation are the key outcome of this report. But probably in days to come or years to come, this has to be spreaded across across the nation, across the state, across the different cities. So from that perspective, I think if we can reorient this study to take into account the level of innovation we are talking about, and also the readiness, technology readiness level. Some technologies may be innovation per se, we can call it as innovation, but unless it has its use, applications, that innovation doesn't give any meaning. So when we talk about these innovations in our report, I am not sure what type of innovation you have covered. If we go through the entire report, then this information may be we will be able to understand. But in a shorter note, that innovation need to be spreaded across, number one. Number two, innovation has to be classified in terms of its readiness level, whether it is we are talking about absolutely fundamental R&D, whether we are talking about TRL 5-6 level innovation, whether it is we are talking about innovation at the final stage. That classification, if we do, the report will be more useful to the policymakers. And lastly, probably if we can link this report with some key recommendations from government perspective. Suppose if I be the Prime Minister or President of a nation, if I get this report, what type of action I will take to change the actual country-specific requirement. So little orientation towards this direction may be more useful for the reader and for the policymakers. Thank you very much for giving an opportunity. Sorry I could miss the time and some problem in joining, but ultimately I could join through mobile. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor, for your contribution. Totally agree. And this is how we envisage all our work, to make it as practical as possible and to address it to various readership, mayors, policymakers, talents themselves, entrepreneurs, and so on. This is our paragon. So as I see in the chat box, our discussion is getting more and more vibrant. I would like now to give the floor to again to Professor Ravitz, but ask you to speak within 1 minute if possible, to respond to Professor Saritas, and then to ask Evgeny. Let's continue the discussion.
Okay, thanks. 1 minute. Certainly kind now. So if we're looking at whole system, not just the indicators for the parts, we might need a different kind of indicator. And I started this thinking in Berlin, of all places. We're on a European regional project, and I was talking to an innovation agency in Berlin. It's called DBH. And they were saying, do you know what? The banks, they are not interested. The universities, they are doing their own thing. They are not talking to us. The entrepreneurs, where do you start? In other words, even in Berlin, the innovation system was not working in comparison to Munich, for example, you know, the centerpiece of German innovation. And this is a problem. It's okay, Berlin, but things are not too bad. But the point is then, if you go to a place where the conditions are not good, and yeah, the quality of the innovation system as a whole is a problem. So we began at that point to look systematically at the indicators of communication, indicators of learning, indicators of cooperation, co-production, and co-innovation. This is now a term in the literature. And this was 10 years ago. We are still looking. It's not an easy thing, as Ochan says, but we have some beginning of some ideas on where to look and where, and also particularly to say, okay, if you get a number indicator, like 69, okay, so what then? What do you do with this information? Is this something you can take to a policymaker and say, oh, change your policy because we have only 69? Or is it something we can build into the learning in that ecosystem, which is then really what the purpose of the indicator is for? And this is also my question to Evgeny and the team which produced this very nice report, very good. And it's okay, so how do we use this information? I'll stop there, thanks.
Yes, thank you very much. Quick response. If just tables, no way to use, but it's a profiles for each city where you could see the strong and weak points. Yes, it's better. First, the second, if you know also the industrial portfolio or patent portfolio, it's plus to that. But also, of course, you need to prepare some case studies like a toolbox, because okay, you see that particular city very good at particular aspect, but how it's formed? Maybe it's not policymakers' aim and the thought, of course, not many, because each success, many people, many actors work for decades. Yes, but how it was done? So if you write this and you have also a set of case studies, it looks like a policy tool. So it was our approach, but of course, it's how to say it. Huge challenge because there is a gap between any analytics and policy making, of course.
Thank you very much. Professor Goswami, I see your hand risen. Please be brief.
Yeah, what I was thinking is when you discuss about innovation, it should be inculcated, this innovation mentality, innovation mind should be inculcated in the school itself. So in our report, if we can give some direction about how to strengthen innovation ecosystem, it should start from schooling itself, school curriculum itself, and also the funding type of funding government is investing on innovation, and especially for in breakthrough research, in black swan identification in foresight terminology, that will help in boosting or escalating innovation ecosystem of any nation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, dear colleagues. I remembered one quote from the Beatles, from the Yellow Submarine, that episode, ad hoc, ad log, and quid pro quo, so little time, so much to know. Really, time has flown very quickly and we still have lots of issues to discuss in more detail. We will have a chance to do so twice, at the end of March, during the presentation of HSE GCIA 2023, and in April at a special seminar devoted to innovation attractiveness of cities. The invitations will follow. Now, as promised, let us practice foresight. We have prepared just one question. Which factor will play the major role in talent attraction to cities in, say, 2050? So now my colleagues, have displayed it. So please choose one option only. The experts and all participants, please, you're all welcome.
We should select just one?
Yes, Alexander Vasilievich, only one option is possible.
এই আওয়াজটা চলে গেল কেন?
So now we will see the results. Okay. Are these the results? Just a second. Yeah. So here they are. And now I ask our speakers again to comment on the results very briefly, up to 1 minute, please. About the factors that will play the major role. Actually, one factor. Have you anticipated them? Do you agree with such a distribution? Dear experts.
I can just comment.
Please.
Very nice survey, thank you. And it made me think, and it also made me think, maybe this meeting is not completely representative of the global community. Who knows? No one is interested in low taxes, for example, but this is the number one priority of the neoliberal, elite and so on. And high concentration of smart money that is not very popular here. Cultural diversity, well, this is my favorite theme, clearly, but I wonder, how many people outside this meeting will agree? Can you run the survey on a global basis?
Good idea.
I pretty much agree with Joe, actually, because we are very much like-minded people. So here, of course, for me personally, it's also, yes, cultural diversity and safe environment, these are good. But also I would complement it, for example, with advanced digital and R&D infrastructure. Okay, because, okay, it's good to have a nice environment, multicultural and so on. So what to do with that after that? And then you think about the R&D and then the, digital technologies. So they should go hand in hand. And one is usually not enough, of course. If I had two choices, I would definitely choose advanced digital and R&D infrastructure along with cultural diversity and flourishing creative sector, because they should be together.
Okay, thank you. Any more comments about this picture?
Also, just to comment, the easy access to outstanding individuals, this is the kind of mantra of innovation policy. Somewhere there are outstanding individuals, Nobel Prize winners, etc. We just have to get them into our party. This is not very popular today. And I wonder why. Well, we could have another hour of discussion on that question. But does this mean there is a change in innovation thinking in this community and others?
Okay. Yeah, interesting results, and I agree that sample matters a lot. That's why we increased it from 36 cities to 200 this time. It's always good to ask more and more. If there are no more comments about the results, I would like now to give the floor to Evgeny Kutsenko for some conclusions.
Yes, Katya, I see that we are a little, yes, very close to the end, but I see that there is a hand from Victor Haykov. Victor, so is it a question or comment? Well, yes.
Евгений, я могу, да, это комментарий, если на русском языке там перевод будет на английский, я так смотрю, что переводчики есть, да?
Yes, it is a translation, but I also could translate.
Да, очень кратко. Виктор Хайков, председатель комиссии по вопросам инновационного развития Общественного совета Министерства экономического развития Российской Федерации, да, для коллег. И вот буквально 3 комментария. Первый комментарий, я соглашусь с коллегой из Индии о том, что совершенно точно нужно четко сфокусировать данный отчет, да, для кого он. Вот если, чтобы он был как практический результат, да, и практическое в конечном итоге применение, то очень важно, чтобы он все же был нацелен в том числе на тех регуляторов, которые принимают решения, да, и формируют инновационную политику и инфраструктуру в стране, да, то есть, ну, в данном случае это у нас в стране это Минэкономразвитие, то есть так или иначе оно курирует инновационную повестку. Это первое. Второе. Вот, по крайней мере, вот в той презентации, которую ты, Жень, делал, там было из России только Москва. Я не знаю, как это будет в итоговом документе, да, но вот очень желательно, чтобы там были другие крупнейшие города страны, да, потому что, ну, как бы то ни было, вы российский университет, да, вот, и очень хотелось бы, чтобы был некий рейтинг вот, других городов, да, крупнейших. Это второй. И третье, которое вытекает из второго, это то, что как идеи, я не знаю, может быть, вы уже об этом думали, но тем не менее. Вот есть рейтинг инвест-привлекательности регионов, да, есть еще много экологические рейтинги и так далее, и так далее. Вот ту работу, которую сейчас вы делаете, да, ее можно положить как за основу некого рейтинга инновационного городов, допустим, регионов, да, и это был бы вот отличный инструмент для того, чтобы мы могли создавать более приемлемые и комфортные условия для развития городов, регионов инновационных, да, для того, чтобы города и регионы конкурировали между собой, смотрели, какие метрики, допустим, влияют на более высокое положение, и уже сами мэры городов, да, губернаторы были бы заинтересованы, чтобы их улучшить, привлечь больше как раз стартапов, инновационщиков и так далее в свои города и развиваться. То есть вот это было бы очень круто. Все, спасибо.
Yes, thank you very much. Very fruitful comments. I hope that our international colleagues could switch because we have a simultaneous translation. But anyway, so Victor said about, yes, for whom this report or this system, it's not obligatory hours, but how we are measuring innovations at city level for whom. And I think it's a very, it's a very tough question. Why? Because in some cases, city, it's a municipality, but in some cases, it's like a region, or Moscow, Beijing, Washington, so it's a regional level cities or regional authorities. In some cases, it could be even like, you know, a country, like Singapore, for example. So the different level of authorities, different responsibilities, different goals. That is why it's very difficult to be precisely, I don't know, equally useful for each city. That's the problem. But what I saw, and maybe I want also to comment it, because in 20th century, what was how to say it? It's to prevent disease, for example. It's water sewage. Yes, that's the main. Don't die in the city like in 18th century. That's the main competitive advantage of the 19th century. 20th century, we see a lot of large corporations. Los Angeles built around them, for example, yes, well, all know about it, about science organizations and so on. 29th century, I think it's how to say it, new factors to think, but authorities, mayors, they are lagging. So they're still thinking about infrastructure, and that's good. You still need to think, but you need more, because talents, they need talents, not only infrastructure. You need to think about innovation agency, creative development agencies, new responsibilities for each cities, not only regional level or like national level, but for municipalities as well, because people, that's the main factors of prosperity. They attract talents and they attract money, taxes and so on. And I think it's like, you know, a restructure of the whole governance framework or management framework. That's very, very important. And Victor, not only Moscow included from Russia in this rating, but be patient. So in a month, so we will make it open and publish it. So, and for me, that results was also very, results of our survey was also very, how to say, controversial and interesting and surprising. Yes, maybe our audience is biased, but it's a Russian audience, by the way. And so Russian experts and some of them policy makers, they know that culture and cultural industries, creative industries and diversity, it's matter. I think so. That's really important. Not only tax incentives and so on. So I think it's very essential to point out first of all, but maybe I choose something else. I think that we don't need to forget about smart money and so on, but that's, how people vote. And I think that we all have different opinions and different aspects, because it's a new topic, and cities, they are small comparing to regions and countries, but they are extremely complex. And I think that that's the main challenge, because you don't have a silver bullet. You need to develop everything, because some people like libraries. Some said that they need safety. Some said that they need green environment. Some need ties to thinkers and leaders, a lot like creative diversity and so on. So you need everything, and that's, I think, the tough challenge of our time, because world is open and you are competing with many cities, many places, and you need to be fast, you need to be wise in order to compete for the best talents. And I hope that our cases and stories from each of us here, from our panel, will be useful for policymakers, for investors, for talents to develop the place and also to choose the best place. Because if they choose the best place, they realize themselves better and make our world better. So I think I want to stop at this good point. Thank you very much for all participants, and I hope that we'll meet again soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you, dear colleagues.
Thank you. Most enjoy. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Great discussion. Thank you.
Yeah.
It was a very nice, very interesting seminar. So my congratulations to everybody. Thank you very much.